Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. So today I'm going to do a review and try out this titanium 125 flux core welder. And I've been playing around with my Hobart welder, which uses gas, and learning to weld. And I thought that maybe I'd want to try out a flux machine. And honestly, today I just happened to be in Harbor Freight and they had this machine on sale for $129. I figured to try flux core out, couldn't really go wrong with that. So let's check it out. So this is not a comparison between these two machines. Certainly the Hobart will run flux core wire, but this is set up and I'm really happy with the way it's running with my solid core wire. So to run flux core, I thought I'd just go ahead and get a second machine. And one of the reasons you want, or you may want, a flux core machine is obviously the expense of the gas. And then the other thing is outside, these gas machines are difficult to use because if it's windy at all, it can blow that gas away. Where flux core, you don't have to worry about that. So let's get into it. So I'm going to save you the unboxing, but it did come in a box. Came set up to run 0.030 flux core wire, and it will also run 0.035, but they didn't send any contact tips or anything for that size. So I'm just going to run it on 0.030, which is the same as I use for my solid core wire. But it came with one extra tip, and then a tip in the gun, and then it has two of these extra nozzles. So these are just plastic. But again, this is not even capable of running gas, so it doesn't really even need a tip, they say. Okay, so one upgrade I did before I've even plugged this in. This is the ground clamp that came with the Flux 125. And what I did was for $6, Harbor Freight had this ground clamp, and then they've got another for like $12. I don't know why I didn't go ahead and get it. But everybody said on the reviews that I've seen on this, to go ahead and upgrade the ground clamp, and that will help you out. Okay, the other tip that I've seen a lot for these Harbor Freight welders is they say the Harbor Freight wire isn't really that good. Although I've been using the Harbor Freight solid core wire in my Hobart machine, and I really didn't have any trouble until I started having feed issues, and I did upgrade to the Hobart wire. But I went ahead and got some Hobart 0.030 gasless flux core wire. And one of the things with the flux wires is a lot of them are single pass only. This is a multi-pass wire. So if that becomes an issue, might as well be able to make multiple passes. Okay, so let's get ready to put this wire in here. So the wire feed on this is similar to the Hobart, but everything feels a little chintzier. Best way I can describe it. So here's where that's 0.030. And on the other side, it's 0.035. So this can run 3.5 or 30 wire, but we're gonna go ahead and use 30, and the only tips that we've got are 30. So on that, if you notice, both of those slots are knurled, and that's so it can grab that flux core wire without squishing it, where the solid core wire uses a smooth roller. So put this back on. There we go. Okay, so we'll put our wire spool on here, and this is winding off this direction, so we want it to shoot through the liner. So we'll put it on out here. And what I learned before is put some tension on this before you cut that wire to keep it from unspooling inside your machine. So put a little tension on this. Okay, and all we want is so that it will spin, but it won't sit there and freeze spool. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get this wire clipped and fed through. I'm gonna feed this wire out of there without letting it go. Okay, and clip off so we have a straight section. That's nice, it won't roll. And we'll feed it in through our hole. Yeah, I don't want to block all of you. Okay, and then it's going through our top slot on our roller and then into the spool liner. Okay, so it's running through the top groove. We'll go ahead and tighten that down. And and I'll just put a little tension on it. And then one of the neat things about this welder is it has a cold feed switch. So instead of having to grab your torch and squeeze the trigger, you can just hit this switch. So I'll go ahead and turn the welder on, which is this button right here on the back. And we'll hit our cold feed roller. And our spool is advancing with our wheel, but it's not free spooling. Okay, and when you're feeding your wire through your liner, an important thing is to go ahead and take the tip off, because when it comes up through that liner, it may or may not shoot through that hole. And if it hangs up there, you can get a big bird's nest mess. So I'll just go ahead and take the tip and the contact tip off. And then using the cold feed switch, there we go. So now that our wire is through the gun, I'll put the contact tip back on. And I'll just give it a little bit of a snug. And I'll put our little torch tip back on. All right, so we're pretty much ready to set the tension and begin to weld. All right, so to test this, we'll run it into a piece of wood and it should curl. Okay, so that should be about right. The next thing that we'll want to do is make sure that it won't drive into a piece of wood, so we'll set it straight down, and then that should let this wheel slip. With the tip straight into a piece of wood, when I pull the trigger, this wheel should slip, which the way we'll see that is this spool won't move. Okay, there we go. And so it's spinning, trying to spin. Let's back it off a little bit. Okay. So, and again, we'll test it here. I think that's going to be about right. To run a couple practice beads, I'm just going to do a few straight welds on this little piece of scrap steel. And this actually was a planer blade, so it's high-speed steel. But we'll see what the settings the machine recommends. So this is, oops. Okay, so this is 1.65 millimeters. So let's see what that says on the machine. So on the lid of our machine, we have our little guide, and 1.6 millimeters says 4 and C for our settings. So we'll go to our settings here, and we'll set the wire speed on 4 and the voltage on C. And then we'll just run a couple passes and see how that does. One of the things with flux core versus solid core is it does splatter a lot more. And so we've got our anti-splatter gel, and I'll just stick the tip in that to keep that a little cleaner. And then so that I don't weld too many little BBs to my table, I've got this anti-splatter spray, and we'll just spray the table with that in the area we're going to be welding. Okay, and then we'll just wipe that across, and that should keep the little BBs from sticking to our table. Okay, so another thing with flux core welding is it makes a whole lot more smoke. So I've got this Lincoln respirator, and I'll be using it. Luke, I am your welder. Okay, that doesn't look that great to me. Let's try another one. Like it's not laying down much wire. Let's knock the slag off. I'm going to turn the wire feed up. Well, it's plenty hot. So we're getting plenty of, this is the back side, and that, it looks almost more like a weld back here than it does on the front. So it might be because this blade, well, this is a planer blade, and maybe that's not, you know, I don't know if that's maybe stainless or something. I thought it was just high-speed steel. But let's try some steel that I know we can weld. Okay, I'm going to go back to some of the pieces that I was welding the other day, because I wasn't happy with the way that welded at all. So this material is 2.7 millimeters. So a 2.7 millimeters, we'll go with 5 and C.5 basically. So let's go to 5 and C.5. So let's run a bead on this just piece of mild steel that welded real well with the solid wire. And we'll try and get you an arc shot. Okay, that looks a little better, and I could actually see the puddle working pretty well there. So let's knock the slag off. Okay, let's clean that up. So I don't think that's horrible, but it's definitely not as good as I was doing with the wire welding. Okay, let's try and do a just a butt joint here, and we'll see how that goes. So I'll cut off both ends. Okay, now that both ends are tacked, I'll clean that off. Because that's one thing to say with flux cores, you've got to clean every time you're getting ready to run another D-ring on. The flux off and clean this metal up before I try and weld this lap or this butt joint. Okay, so we got our tacks good, and there's a little bit more gap on the left side than on the right, but I'm going to run through here just right to left. One thing that I found out, I'm using a little more stick out on the wire than what I had been doing with my solid wire. All right, we ready? Yep. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the way that looked. I was able to maintain watching the puddle the entire time. So let's clean that off and see how it looks. It felt good. Okay, well here's our butt joint, and I don't think that looks horrible. I'm sure there's better ones, but it looks like it got pretty even coverage. It looks about the same width the entire way, and if you look at the ends, it does have good penetration, and actually from the back, we got some weld that came all the way through, so that's not bad. See all these little BBs on there? That's what that anti-spatter spray does, and you could spray the piece with the anti-spatter spray, but on my table here, it had all those little BBs on them and they just wipe right off. So that's what the anti-spatter spray is for, and it works really well. When I was using my solid core wire, I welded my table several times, and I'm sure I've done it today too, but it just knocks off, so that's pretty cool. We'll set up a T-joint and try that out. So we got one super hot piece and two pieces that are cold. Okay, so there's our T, and we'll try and weld that up. And I'll start by tacking both ends here. And we'll go straight into the corner at about a 10-degree angle back. Oops, missed my figure. Okay, so here's our pump. And we'll pop the other one. Okay, so we've got these tacked. I'm going to hit that to get the slag off. Okay, and I'll try and just clean up that smoke spatter. I don't know what it's called, but okay, now we'll run a bead through there, and I don't know, I think I'll just try to go straight instead of making like my little E's or even the C's. Like I said, I'm not that advanced yet, so I'm just going to try and do a straight slide through here. Okay, with the slag on it, don't look too bad. We'll clean it up and see what we think. Okay, so obviously Maggie's helping me record this, and just so everybody knows, she's got her safety equipment on too. Raise your helmet, including respiratory protection. All right, well, let's clean this up and see what we got. Okay, so actually right here looks pretty good. It started getting a little sloppy towards the end. I'm not sure what. I know I was playing with how far I was holding the torch a little bit, and I saw some big piece of slag go down the wire about right there too, so that was kind of weird, but like I said, that first 1.5 inches anyway, I'm real happy with that. The rest of it, it'd probably hold, but I don't think it's great. On the back side of it, you can see it had plenty of heat come through. And you can see a little bit of weld penetration too come through that crack. So she ain't going nowhere. Okay, that'll do it as a Hobbyist Welder review on the Titanium 125 Flux machine. And I really liked it. It's something that I'm gonna have to practice with, but it's pretty cheap practice. So not using any gas. Like I said, it's a little messier, but we're using the respirators and I think we're doing it safe. So we're enjoying it, and that's all that matters to me. One of the reasons we wanted the Flux machine versus the gas machine is so that I could use this outside in the wind and not have to worry about blowing the gas away. So for $129, I think it's a pretty good little welder. So I wouldn't recommend starting a welding shop with it, but for like me, a hobbyist, just learning, I think it's gonna be perfect. Don't forget to like the video if you did, and we encourage you to subscribe to see more. Have a great day and be safe.